Arrogant alien kept poking the human, so he bit her to show his dominance. The desert winds of Proxima Station howled against the reinforced glass of the docking bay, carrying fine red sand that seemed determined to infiltrate every crevice of the massive structure. Commander Marcus Hill stood at parade rest, his muscular arms exposed by his black armor's sleeveless design, the material dense enough to stop most conventional weapons, but flexible enough to allow for quick movement. His blonde hair was tousled from the artificial wind generated by the recently docked ship's engines, and his piercing blue eyes narrowed as the vessel's ramp descended with theatrical slowness. "Quite the entrance," muttered Lieutenant Parker beside him, adjusting his collar nervously. Yana Marcus grunted in response. The Kvari always did have a flair for the dramatic. The Federation's largest space station on the desert planet Proxima 7 wasn't typically a hotbed for diplomatic incidents, but today felt different. As head of security, Marcus had dealt with his fair share of entitled dignitaries and pompous officials, but the intelligence briefing on today's arrival had set his teeth on edge. Lady Alara Kvari, daughter of Lord Tiberius Kvari, owner of roughly 60% of Proxima 7's mineral rights and one of the wealthiest beings in the known galaxy. The file described her as difficult, which in diplomatic speak usually meant absolute nightmare. A cloud of sweet-smelling incense preceded her exit from the ship, followed by a procession of servants carrying elaborate containers that Marcus assumed contained her personal effects. Then she appeared, and despite himself, his breath caught. Lady Alara stood tall and proud, her red skin gleaming like polished copper under the harsh lights of the docking bay. Her golden eyes surveyed the welcoming committee with obvious disdain, and her fiery hair cascaded down her back in elaborate braids interwoven with precious metals. Her outfit, a tight black ensemble with a neckline that plunged dangerously low and strategic cutouts that revealed flashes of crimson skin, was more appropriate for a high-end nightclub than a diplomatic mission. "Commander Hill," she said, her voice musical but sharp, "I expected someone more impressive to greet me." Marcus stepped forward, maintaining his professional demeanor despite the immediate insult. "Lady Kvari, on behalf of the Federation, welcome to Proxima Station. I'm the head of security and will be personally overseeing your safety during your stay." She circled him slowly, like a predator sizing up potential prey. "A human? How quaint. I thought they'd assign someone more suitable to my status." "I assure you, my credentials are more than adequate," Marcus replied evenly, ignoring the way her eyes lingered on his exposed arms. "We'll see about that." She snapped her fingers and her entourage immediately began moving toward the exit. "My quarters better be prepared exactly as I specified." Marcus fell into step beside her. "Everything has been arranged according to your requirements, Lady Kvari." "I doubt that very much," she scoffed. "Humans rarely understand the nuances of proper accommodation." As they walked through the station's main corridor, Marcus noticed the way other personnel quickly moved aside, some openly staring at the alien aristocrat. He couldn't blame them. She was striking, both in appearance and demeanor. "Your security protocols are laughable," she commented, gesturing to a scanning checkpoint. "Any determined assassin could bypass these measures." "Our systems are state-of-the-art," Marcus countered, "and I personally vetted every member of the security team." She stopped abruptly, turning to face him. "You don't understand who I am, do you?" "You're Lady Alara Kvari, daughter of Lord Tiberius Kvari," he recited, "here on a diplomatic mission to negotiate new mining rights. I am the heir to the largest fortune in 3 systems," she corrected, poking him firmly in the chest with one slender finger. "My bloodline traces back to the founding of the Galactic Concordat. I could buy and sell this entire station with the equivalent of your pocket change." Marcus remained stoic, though the finger jabbing at his chest was testing his patience. "Your lineage is noted in your file, Lady Kvari." Her golden eyes flashed. "You don't even look at me with the respect I deserve." She poked him again, harder this time. Marcus exhaled slowly, counting backward from 10 in his head. "Do you think you can just ignore me?" Another poke, this time accompanied by a step closer, invading his personal space. "Look, lady, I'm not here for entertainment," he said, his voice low and controlled. "I'm here to ensure your safety and the security of the station." Her lips curled into a smirk. "Oh, so the human does have a voice. I was beginning to wonder if you were mute." Her finger rose again, but this time she didn't aim for his chest. Instead, she brushed it lightly against his jawline, tracing the line of his stubble. Such primitive features. Fascinating, really. That was it. The line had been crossed. In one fluid motion, Marcus captured her wrist in his hand. Before she could react, before he could fully process his own actions, he pulled her hand toward his face and nipped at her fingers. Not hard enough to break skin, but definitely enough to make a point. The corridor fell silent. Even the background hum of the station system seemed to fade away as Lady Alara stared at him in absolute shock. "You? What did you just do?" Her golden eyes were wide with disbelief. Marcus released her wrist but held her gaze. "Showed you that even humans have boundaries," he replied, a hint of a smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. For several long seconds, they stood frozen in a tableau of mutual astonishment. She, filled with outrage and something else he couldn't quite identify, and he, suddenly aware that he might have just created a diplomatic incident of galactic proportions. "Commander Hill," she finally said, her voice unnervingly calm, "I believe we need to discuss the parameters of your service in private." Before Marcus could respond, the station's alarm system blared to life. "Security breach in Sector 7, announced the automated system. All personnel to designated stations." Marcus's communicator buzzed at his wrist. "Commander, we've got unauthorized access to the main computer core," Lieutenant Parker's voice reported. "Looks like someone's trying to hack into the defense systems." "I'm on my way," Marcus replied, then turned to Lady Alara. "You'll be escorted to your quarters by my team. Please remain there until I return." "I don't take orders from—" "This isn't a request," he cut her off, signaling to two nearby security officers. "This is protocol during a security breach." For once, she seemed too surprised by his authoritative tone to argue. As the security officers approached to escort her, Marcus was already moving towards Sector 7, his mind racing through possible scenarios and response strategies. What he didn't see was the small smile that played across Lady Alara's lips as she watched him go, or the way she absently touched the fingers he had bitten, a curious expression replacing her earlier outrage. The security breach turned out to be a sophisticated but ultimately unsuccessful attempt to access classified Federation defense protocols. Marcus spent hours coordinating the response, reinforcing firewalls and interrogating the station's cybersecurity team about how the breach had occurred in the first place. By the time he made it back to his quarters, he was exhausted and still processing the events of the day, particularly his unorthodox interaction with Lady Alara. He knew he should report the incident to his superiors, but something held him back. Perhaps it was the knowledge that such a report would inevitably lead to his reassignment, or worse. He had just removed his armor when his door chime sounded. "Computer, identify visitor," he commanded. "Lady Alara Kvari," the system responded. Marcus closed his eyes briefly, considering his options. He could pretend to be asleep, but that would only delay the inevitable confrontation. Better to face it head-on. "Enter," he called, pulling on a standard-issue black t-shirt. The door slid open to reveal Lady Alara, still in her provocative outfit, but now without her entourage. She stepped inside, allowing the door to close behind her. "Commander Hill," she said, her voice lacking its earlier sharpness, "I believe we have unfinished business." Marcus straightened, preparing himself for whatever complaint or threat she was about to level at him. "Lady Kvari, regarding my earlier behavior, no one has ever done that to me before," she interrupted, moving closer. "No one has ever dared—" He blinked, thrown off by her tone. It wasn't angry as he'd expected, but almost impressed. "It was unprofessional," he admitted. "I apologize for—" "Don't," she cut him off again, now close enough that he could smell the exotic fragrance she wore. "Don't apologize, it was refreshing." Marcus studied her face, trying to determine if this was some kind of trap. "Refreshing? Do you know how tedious it is?" she asked, beginning to pace his small quarters. "Everyone bowing and scraping, agreeing with everything I say, rushing to fulfill my every whim. No one ever challenges me. No one ever treats me like a person instead of a title." "That doesn't excuse my behavior," Marcus said carefully. She stopped pacing and turned to face him. "Perhaps not. But it does explain why I'm here instead of filing a formal complaint that would end your career. And why are you here exactly? He asked, suddenly very aware of how small his quarters felt with her in them. Lady Alara smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face from merely beautiful to breathtaking. I'm here because you're interesting, Commander Hill, and interesting things are rare in my world. Before Marcus could respond, his communicator buzzed again. Commander, we've identified the source of the security breach, came Lieutenant Parker's voice. You're going to want to see this. Marcus glanced at Lady Alara apologetically. Duty calls. Indeed it does, she replied, moving toward the door. But our conversation isn't over, Commander. I'll make sure of that. As she left, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just become significantly more complicated and potentially more dangerous than any security breach could ever be. The command center of Proxima Station hummed with activity as Marcus stared at the holographic display, his jaw clenched tight. The security breach had been more sophisticated than initially thought, a multi-layered infiltration designed to bypass even the most advanced Federation protocols. Play it again, he ordered, and Lieutenant Parker nodded, rewinding the surveillance footage. The hologram flickered, showing a shadowy figure moving through the maintenance corridors near Lady Alara's assigned quarters. The intruder's face remained obscured, but their movements were precise, practiced, professional. Facial recognition came up empty, Parker reported, but the height and build analysis suggests Morcadian origins. Morcadian? Marcus frowned. They're not exactly known for their subtlety. This is too sophisticated for their usual smash-and-grab operations. Unless they're working for someone else, suggested Security Officer Chambers from her console. Someone with resources, Marcus nodded slowly. Someone who can afford to hire the best. He straightened, his decision made. Pull all the data on known Morcadian operatives in this sector and get me everything we have on Lady Kravari's enemies. Business rivals, political opponents, jilted lovers, the works. Sir, Parker hesitated, that could be a rather extensive list. Then you better get started, Marcus replied, already heading for the door. I need to inform our guest that she's apparently the target. Lady Alara's quarters occupied an entire section of the diplomatic wing, a space typically reserved for planetary governors or Federation ambassadors. The opulence was evident even from the corridor, with the scent of exotic incense wafting through the air and the soft sound of unfamiliar music playing within. Marcus pressed the entry chime, steeling himself for another confrontation. When the door slid open, he was surprised to find Lady Alara alone, without her usual entourage of servants. Commander Hill, she greeted him, her golden eyes lighting up with interest. Twice in one day, I'm beginning to think you enjoy my company. She had changed from her earlier provocative outfit into something that should have been more modest, a flowing robe of shimmering material that caught the light with every movement, but somehow managed to be equally alluring. The fabric clung to her form in ways that defied the laws of physics, and the deep crimson color matched her skin tone perfectly. This isn't a social call, Lady Kvari, Marcus said, trying to keep his eyes fixed firmly on her face. May I come in? She stepped aside with a graceful gesture. By all means, and please, call me Alara. Lady Kvari makes me sound like my mother. Marcus entered, immediately scanning the room for potential security vulnerabilities. The suite was lavish, with furnishings imported from at least 3 different star systems, but what caught his attention were the windows, large, panoramic, and offering an excellent line of sight for any would-be assassin. We need to move you to a more secure location, he said without preamble. The security breach was targeted. Someone's trying to get to you. Alara laughed, a musical sound that caught him off guard. Commander, someone is always trying to get to me. As you put it, it comes with the territory. This is different, Marcus insisted. The infiltration was professional, targeted specifically at your quarters security systems. This isn't some opportunistic thief or paparazzi drone. This is a coordinated attack. She studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. And you're concerned for my safety? How touching. It's my job, he replied automatically. Is it your job to bite aristocrats who annoy you too? She asked, a mischievous glint in her eye. Marcus felt heat rise to his face. About that, Oh, don't start apologizing again, she waved dismissively. It was the most interesting thing that's happened to me in months. She moved closer, her robe shimmering like liquid fire. Do you know how many beings across the galaxy would give their entire fortunes for the privilege of touching me, let alone tasting me? The way she said tasting sent an unexpected jolt through Marcus's system. Lady, Alara, we need to focus on the security threat. Of course, she agreed, though her tone suggested she found his professional concern amusing. What do you propose, Commander? Shall I barricade myself in some dreary, safe room while you hunt down these mysterious assailants? Actually, yes, Marcus nodded. We have secure quarters in the central hub, away from external walls, with dedicated security systems independent from the main grid. Alara sighed dramatically. How dreadfully boring. I have meetings scheduled, Commander. Diplomatic functions. I didn't come all this way to hide in a bunker. Those meetings can be rescheduled or conducted virtually, Marcus countered. Your safety takes precedence. Does it? She asked, tilting her head. Or is it the station's reputation you're concerned with? Imagine the scandal if Lord Kravari's daughter were assassinated under Federation protection. Marcus stepped closer, his patience wearing thin. I don't give a damn about politics or reputation. I'm trying to keep you alive. How refreshingly direct, she murmured, her golden eyes locked with his. Very well, Commander. I'll agree to your security measures on one condition. He should have known there would be conditions. Which is, you stay with me, she said simply, as my personal security detail. Marcus blinked. That's not necessary. I have a team of highly trained. I don't trust them, she interrupted. I trust you. You don't even know me, he pointed out. Alara smiled, a slow, deliberate expression that transformed her face. I know enough. You're the only person on this station who sees me as more than a title or a political asset. You treat me like a person, albeit an annoying one. She reached out, her fingers hovering just shy of touching his arm. Besides, you've already demonstrated your willingness to take decisive action when necessary. The memory of her finger against his lips, the impulsive bite flashed through Marcus's mind. That was inappropriate. It was honest, she corrected, and in my experience, honest people are rare and valuable. Her expression turned serious. So do we have a deal, Commander? You as my personal protector until this threat is neutralized? Every instinct told Marcus this was a bad idea. He should assign a team, maintain professional distance, coordinate the investigation from the command center. But something in her golden eyes, vulnerability beneath the arrogance perhaps, made the decision for him. Fine, he agreed, but we play by my rules. No diplomatic functions, no unnecessary exposure. And you follow my instructions without argument. Alara laughed again. I can't promise the without argument part, but I'll consider your instructions carefully. Marcus suppressed a sigh. Pack what you need, essential items only. We move in 30 minutes. The secure quarters were significantly less luxurious than Alara's diplomatic suite, but still comfortable by Federation standards. Located deep within the station's central hub, the rooms were designed for high-ranking officials during emergencies. Functional, secure, and completely isolated from external access points. Cozy, Alara commented dryly as she surveyed the main living area. Though your Federation designers could benefit from some lessons in aesthetics. Marcus ignored the jab, busy configuring the security systems. The outer door requires both biometric and code authentication. Food will be delivered by trusted personnel only. Communications are limited to secure channels, which I'll monitor personally. So I'm effectively your prisoner, she observed, running a finger along the edge of a utilitarian desk. You're under protection, he corrected. There's a difference. Is there? She moved to stand behind him, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her body. Both scenarios involve being confined to a small space under your watchful eye. Marcus turned to face her, finding himself unexpectedly close. Her golden eyes were even more striking up close, flecked with amber highlights that seemed to shift and dance in the light. The difference, he said carefully, is intent. I'm not keeping you here to control you. I'm keeping you here to protect you. And if I want to leave, she challenged, then I'll do everything in my power to convince you otherwise, he replied honestly. But ultimately, you're not my prisoner. You're my responsibility. Something flickered across her face, surprised perhaps at his candor. You're a curious human, Commander Hill. Marcus, he found himself saying, if I'm calling you Alara, you might as well use my first name. Marcus, she repeated, as if testing how it felt on her tongue. Strong, ancient name. It suits you. The compliment caught him off guard, and he busied himself with the security console again. I need to check in with my team, see if they have made any progress identifying our intruder. Of course, or she said, stepping back and giving him space. Do what you must. Marcus activated his communicator. Hill to command center. Parker here, sir, came the immediate response. We've been analyzing the infiltration pattern. It's unusual. Unusual how? Marcus asked, his attention sharpening. The intruder bypassed 3 layers of security, but didn't actually access any sensitive systems. It's like they were testing our defenses, mapping out vulnerabilities without exploiting them. Reconnaissance, Marcus muttered. They're planning something bigger. That's our assessment as well, sir. We've identified similar patterns at 2 other Federation outposts in the past month, both prior to diplomatic visits by high-value targets. Any casualties at those outposts? Marcus asked, aware of Alara listening intently. None, sir. In both cases, the targets left before any direct action was taken, but we've received intelligence suggesting the same operatives may be involved in the disappearance of a Centaurian ambassador last quarter. Marcus's jaw tightened. Keep digging. I want names, affiliations, known associates, anything that might help us identify who's behind this, and double the security on all access points to the central hub. Already done, sir. Parker out. As the communication ended, Marcus turned to find Alara watching him with an unreadable expression. It seems I brought trouble to your doorstep, Commander. Marcus, she said, her usual haughty tone subdued. The trouble would have found its way here with or without you, he replied. At least now we're aware of it. Alara moved to the room's small viewport, gazing out at the limited view of the station's interior. You know, in my culture, there's a saying, danger makes strange bedfellows. Marcus raised an eyebrow. I think humans have a similar expression. Do they? She turned to face him, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. How fascinating. Perhaps our species aren't so different after all. In some ways, he acknowledged, suddenly aware of how the station's lighting caught the fiery highlights in her hair. And in others, she prompted, taking a step toward him. Marcus found himself mirroring her movement, closing the distance between them slightly. In others, we're worlds apart. Worlds can be bridged, she murmured, her golden eyes holding his. Distances crossed. The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with something neither of them had fully acknowledged. Marcus was acutely conscious of her alien beauty, the rich crimson of her skin, the impossible gold of her eyes, the way her hair seemed alive with its own inner fire. Alara, he began, not entirely sure what he intended to say. The moment was shattered by the sudden blare of alarms. Red emergency lights bathed the room, casting strange shadows across Alara's features. Security breach in Central Hub, announced the station's automated system. All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Marcus's communicator buzzed frantically. Commander, Parker's voice was tight with urgency. They're inside the station, multiple hostiles, heavily armed, heading straight for the secure quarters. Lock it down, Marcus ordered, already moving to the weapons locker embedded in the wall. Full containment protocols. No one gets in or out without my direct authorization. Sir, they've already bypassed the first security checkpoint. They're using Federation override codes. Marcus cursed under his breath as he punched in the code to the weapons locker. Inside job, should have seen it coming. He pulled out a standard-issue pulse rifle and a sidearm, checking both quickly. Alara watched him, her earlier playfulness replaced by a calm focus that surprised him. How many? At least 6, according to the security feeds, he replied, offering her the sidearm. You know how to use one of these? She took the weapon with practiced ease, checking the charge and safety in a fluid motion that spoke of experience. I wasn't always a pampered aristocrat, Marcus. He raised an eyebrow but didn't have time to question her further. Stay behind me. If I fall, there's an emergency escape hatch in the bedroom. It leads to maintenance tunnels that can take you to the evacuation pods. I'm not leaving you behind, she said firmly. This isn't a debate, Marcus replied, moving to position himself near the door. Your survival is the priority. And who decided that? She challenged, taking up position on the opposite side of the door, her stance professional and balanced. I did, he said simply. It's my job. Your job, she repeated, a strange expression crossing her face. Is that all this is to you? Before Marcus could respond, the outer door's security panel beeped. Someone was attempting to override the lock. He raised his rifle, sighting down the barrel at the entrance. We'll discuss job descriptions later, he said quietly, assuming we survive the next few minutes. Oh, we'll survive, Alara replied. And there was something in her tone, a certainty, a power, that made him glance at her. Her golden eyes seemed to glow in the red, emergency lighting, and her expression held none of the fear he might have expected. Instead, she looked excited. I have so much more to learn about humans, she added, her lips curving into a smile that was equal parts dangerous and alluring. Particularly this one human who had the audacity to bite me. The security panel flashed green, and the door began to slide open. The first attacker through the door went down before they fully entered the room, Marcus's pulse rifle finding its mark with practiced precision. The second managed to get off a wild shot that scorched the wall near Alara's head before she calmly put 2 energy bolts through their chest. Not bad, Mon, Marcus commented, genuinely impressed by her marksmanship. I told you, she replied, already adjusting her aim toward the doorway. Not always pampered. The attackers fell back, regrouping in the corridor outside. Marcus used the momentary reprieve to activate his communicator. Hill to security team, we need backup at secure quarters. Level 4, Section C. Multiple hostiles, armed and dangerous. Static answered him. They're jamming communications, he realized grimly. We're on our own. Alara nodded, her expression focused. How long before someone notices the communications blackout? Standard protocol is 15 minutes before systems automatically flag it, Marcus replied. But with the alarms already triggered, response teams should be mobilizing throughout the station. So we just need to hold out, she concluded. Easier said than done, Marcus muttered, eyeing the doorway. The attackers were being cautious now, aware they'd lost the element of surprise. They'll try something else, probably. As if on cue, a small metallic sphere rolled through the doorway. Stun grenade, Marcus shouted, lunging toward Alara. He tackled her to the ground, covering her body with his own, just as the device detonated with a blinding flash and a concussive wave that rattled his teeth. His ears rang painfully, and spots danced across his vision. But years of training kicked in. He rolled, bringing his rifle up and firing blindly toward the door. The weapon's recoil was a distant sensation against his shoulder, his body operating on instinct and muscle memory. Through the haze, he saw shadowy figures entering the room. 2 went down under his suppressive fire, but a third got through, heading straight for Alara, who was still disoriented on the floor. Marcus abandoned his rifle, drawing a combat knife from his boot and launching himself at the attacker. They collided with bone-jarring force, tumbling across the floor in a tangle of limbs. The attacker, a Morcadian, just as they'd suspected, was strong, with the dense musculature characteristic of their species. They grappled, each seeking leverage, each trying to bring their weapon to bear. The Morcadian's breath was hot against Marcus's face, their 4 eyes blinking in their species' distinctive pattern of aggression. A 3-fingered hand closed around Marcus's throat, squeezing with crushing force. Spots darkened his vision as oxygen became scarce. He slashed with his knife, feeling it connect but not deeply enough to disable his opponent. The pressure on his throat increased, and he knew he had seconds before unconsciousness claimed him. Then suddenly the pressure was gone. The Morcadian's eyes widened in surprise, all 4 pupils dilating simultaneously. They slumped forward, revealing Alara standing behind them, her sidearm still smoking from the point-blank shot to the attacker's back. I told you, she said, helping Marcus to his feet. Not always pampered. He rubbed his throat, coughing. Thanks. Consider us even for the security breach interrupting our conversation. Earlier, she replied with a hint of her usual mischief, despite the gravity of the situation. Marcus quickly assessed the room. 4 attackers down, but Parker had reported 6. "We need to move. There are still at least 2 more out there." "The bedroom escape hatch," Alara suggested. He nodded, and it's our best option. "Grab anything essential. We won't be coming back here." As Alara quickly gathered a few items, Marcus retrieved his rifle and checked the corridor. Clear for the moment, but that wouldn't last. He could hear distant sounds of combat elsewhere in the station. The attack wasn't limited to their location. "Ready," Alara announced, now wearing a fitted jacket over her flowing robe, the sidearm holstered at her hip. They moved quickly to the bedroom, where Marcus located the hidden panel concealing the emergency escape hatch. As he worked to open it, Alara kept watch at the bedroom door, her posture tense but controlled. "You handle yourself well in combat," Marcus observed as he input the access code for the hatch. "Not typical for an aristocrat." "My father insisted I learn to defend myself," she replied, her eyes never leaving the doorway. "He said privilege without capability is just vulnerability waiting to be exploited." "Smart man." "He has his moments," she agreed, a hint of fondness in her voice. "Though if you ever tell him I said that, I'll deny it vehemently." The hatch clicked open, revealing a narrow maintenance tunnel bathed in dim emergency lighting. "Ladies first," Marcus gestured. Alara arched an eyebrow. "How chivalrous. Even in the midst of an assassination attempt, human males maintain their quaint customs." "It's not chivalry," he corrected. "It's tactics. You're the primary target. I'm the rear guard." "Ah," she nodded, understanding. "Protecting the asset. Very professional of you, Commander." Before he could respond, she leaned in swiftly and pressed her lips to his cheek. A brief, warm contact that left him momentarily stunned. "For luck," she explained with a small smile, and then slipped into the tunnel without waiting for his reaction. Marcus touched his cheek briefly, feeling the lingering warmth where her lips had been. Then, hearing movement from the outer room, he quickly followed her into the tunnel, sealing the hatch behind them. The maintenance tunnel was cramped, forcing them to move in a crouch. The emergency lighting cast everything in a reddish glow that made Alara's skin seem to blend with the shadows, only her golden eyes and fiery hair standing out clearly. "Where does this lead?" she whispered as they moved. "Auxiliary Control Center," Marcus replied quietly. "From there, we can access secure communications and coordinate with security teams." They moved in silence for several minutes, the only sounds their breathing and the distant rumble of the station systems. Marcus was acutely aware of Alara ahead of him, the graceful way she moved despite the confined space, the subtle scent of her exotic perfume lingering in the air. "Stop!" he suddenly hissed, catching her arm. "Listen." They froze, straining to hear. A faint metallic scraping echoed through the tunnel. Someone else was in the maintenance system, moving parallel to them. "They're in the adjacent tunnel," Marcus whispered, "moving in the same direction." "They must have anticipated our escape route," Alara murmured back. "We need to change course," Marcus decided. "There's a junction ahead. We can divert to the lower levels, lose them in the cargo processing section." They continued forward, more cautiously now. When they reached the junction, Marcus quickly input an override code to access the vertical shaft that would take them down 3 levels. "It's a long climb down," he warned, "and not exactly designed for comfort." Alara peered down the shaft, which was little more than a series of maintenance rungs set into the wall, disappearing into darkness below. "I've climbed worse in formal attire at diplomatic functions," she said dryly. "Well, this will be a pleasant change." Marcus couldn't help but smile at her resilience. "After you, then." She began the descent with surprising agility, her movements sure and confident. Marcus followed, keeping a watchful eye both above and below as they made their way down the shaft. Halfway down, a noise from above caught his attention. A hatch opening, voices. Their pursuers had found their trail. "Move faster," he urged quietly. "They're behind us." Alara increased her pace without question, and soon they reached the bottom of the shaft. Marcus quickly helped her onto the ledge of the lower tunnel, then followed, securing the access hatch behind them. "That won't hold them long," he said grimly. "Then we better not be here when they arrive," Alara replied, already moving down the new tunnel. This passage was wider, designed for maintenance drones rather than human access. They could almost stand upright, which allowed them to move more quickly. The cargo processing section loomed ahead, a cavernous space filled with automated sorting systems and storage containers. Perfect for losing pursuers, Marcus commented as they emerged onto a maintenance walkway overlooking the cargo floor. But also perfect for an ambush. Stay close. They descended to the main floor, weaving between towering stacks of cargo containers. The irregular patterns of the sorting machinery provided cover, but also created a labyrinthine environment where threats could hide easily. Marcus led them through the maze with purpose, heading for a security station on the far side, where they could potentially re-establish communications. They were halfway there when a movement caught his eye, a shadow where none should be. He reacted instantly, pushing Alara behind a container just as energy fire erupted from their left flank. The shots impacted where they had been standing moments before, leaving scorched marks on the metal flooring. 2 o'clock, behind the yellow container, Marcus whispered, indicating the position with a subtle gesture. Alara nodded, her golden eyes narrowed in concentration. Without prompting, she laid down covering fire, allowing Marcus to dash to a better position. He returned the favor, and together they advanced in a leapfrog pattern that spoke of practiced coordination. The attacker, one of the remaining Morcadians, realized they were being flanked and attempted to retreat. Marcus cut off their escape route with a well-placed shot that forced them back into Alara's line of fire. Her shot caught the Morcadian in the shoulder, spinning them around and exposing them fully to Marcus's follow-up that put them down permanently. 5 down, 1 to go, Marcus counted, moving to secure the fallen attacker's weapon. "Make that 6, came Alara's voice, followed by the distinctive sound of her sidearm discharging. Marcus spun to see the final attacker collapsing, having attempted to sneak up behind him while he was focused on the other threat. Alara stood with her weapon still raised, her expression coldly satisfied. "You're full of surprises," Marcus said, genuinely impressed. "I told you I wasn't always pampered," he finished for her, a smile tugging at his lips, despite the situation. "So I'm gathering." For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the adrenaline of combat creating a strange, charged connection between them. Then Alara lowered her weapon, her posture relaxing slightly. "We should keep moving," she said. "There could be more." Marcus nodded, leading them toward the security station with renewed urgency. When they reached it, he quickly accessed the communication system, relieved to find it operational. "Hilda Command Center," he transmitted. "Status report." "Commander," Parker's voice came through, heavy with relief. "We've been trying to reach you. The station is secure. Repeat, the station is secure. All hostiles have been neutralized or captured." "Casualties?" Marcus asked. "Minor injuries only, sir. The attack was focused primarily on reaching Lady Kvari. Once they realized she wasn't in her quarters, they seemed to lose coordination. We've eliminated 6 hostiles in the central hub and cargo processing," Marcus reported. "Lady Kvari is safe and with me." "Understood, sir. Security teams are conducting a final sweep, but it appears the threat has been contained. Admiral Thorson is requesting a full briefing as soon as you're available." "Tell him I'll report in 1 hour," Marcus replied. "I need to get Lady Kvari to medical for a checkup first." "I'm fine," Alara protested as he ended the communication. "Protocol," Marcus insisted. "After an incident like this, everyone gets checked." She looked like she might argue further, but then simply nodded. "Very well. Lead the way, Commander." The medical bay was quiet, most of the station's injured having already been treated and released. Dr. Navarro, the chief medical officer, personally examined Alara, pronouncing her physically unharmed, but recommending rest to counteract the stress of the attack. "The same goes for you, Commander," the doctor added, giving Marcus a pointed look. "You've got bruising on your throat and minor contusions from your hand-to-hand encounter. Nothing serious, but you should take it easy for the next 24 hours. "I have a briefing with Admiral Thorson," Marcus replied. "After that," Dr. Navarro said firmly, "rest. Doctor's orders." Once they were cleared, Marcus escorted Alara to newly assigned quarters, a different secure suite, this one with enhanced security measures and a full complement of guards outside. "Is all this really necessary?" Alara asked as they entered the suite, which was similar to the previous one, but with fewer windows and more obvious security features. "Until we know who was behind the attack and why, yes," Marcus replied. "We can't take any chances." Alara moved to the center of the room, turning slowly to take in her new accommodations. Another cage, albeit a slightly larger one. A temporary precaution, Marcus assured her. Once we've identified and neutralized the threat, you can return me to my original gilded cage, she finished, a hint of bitterness in her tone. How thrilling. Marcus studied her, seeing beyond the sarcasm to something deeper. You don't enjoy your position, do you? All the privilege, the power, the wealth. It's not what you want. She looked at him sharply. What makes you say that? The way you fight, he said simply. That's not something learned in self-defense classes for aristocrats. That's battlefield experience. And the way you talk about being pampered, like it's a prison sentence rather than a privilege. Alara was silent for a long moment, her golden eyes assessing him with new interest. You see more than most, Marcus Hill. It's my job to observe, he replied, to notice details others miss. Is that all it is? She asked softly. Your job. The question hung between them, laden with meaning beyond the simple words. Marcus found himself moving closer to her, drawn by something he couldn't quite name. No, he admitted, not anymore. Her lips curved into a smile, not the haughty smirk he'd first encountered, but something more genuine, more vulnerable. Good, because I find myself intrigued by you, Commander. More than is probably wise. Wisdom has little to do with it, Marcus said, now close enough to see the flecks of amber in her golden eyes. If it did, I wouldn't be here right now. Where would you be? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Anywhere but alone in a room with the daughter of the most powerful man in 3 systems, having thoughts that would probably get me court-martialed, he answered honestly. Alara laughed softly. Such honesty. It's refreshing. She reached up, her fingers hovering just shy of touching his face, mirroring her earlier gesture that had led to his impulsive bite. May I? This time, Marcus nodded, and her cool fingers traced the line of his jaw, exploring the texture of his stubble with evident fascination. Your kind are so different from mine, she murmured. So tactile. Everything about you invites touch. Marcus caught her hand in his, turning it to examine the slender fingers he had bitten earlier. No mark remained on her crimson skin. I'm sorry about before, he said. I shouldn't have. Don't apologize, she interrupted. It was exhilarating. No one has ever dared to challenge me like that. Is that what you want? He asked, still holding her hand. To be challenged? Among other things, she replied, her free hand coming to rest lightly on his chest. I want to experience life beyond the constraints of my title, to know what it means to be seen for who I am, not what I represent. Her words resonated with something deep within him, his own sense of being defined by his role, his rank, his duty. I see you, Alara, he said quietly. Not Lady Kvari, not a diplomatic asset. You. The space between them seemed to contract, the air charged with possibility. Alara's golden eyes held his, searching, questioning. Marcus found himself leaning forward, drawn by an attraction that defied logic or protocol. Their lips met hesitantly at first, then with growing certainty. Her mouth was warm against his, her taste exotic and intoxicating. His hands found her waist, pulling her closer as the kiss deepened, becoming something urgent and necessary. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Alara's eyes were shining with a mixture of wonder and desire. Well, she said softly, that was worth crossing 3-star systems for. Marcus couldn't help but laugh, the tension of the day finding release in the simple joy of holding her. Just wait until you see what else humans are capable of, he murmured against her hair. Is that a promise, Commander? She asked, her hands sliding up his chest to link behind his neck. Absolutely, he replied, capturing her lips again in a kiss that left no doubt about his intentions. The briefing with Admiral Thorson would have to wait a little longer. The morning after their first kiss, Marcus stood before Admiral Thorson in the station's command center, delivering his report on the assassination attempt. The Admiral, a stern, gray-haired man with more battle scars than smiles, listened with his usual stoic expression, occasionally nodding as Marcus detailed the coordinated attack. 6 Morcadian operatives, all using advanced Federation override codes, Marcus concluded. That suggests high-level infiltration. Admiral Thorson's weathered face remained impassive, but his eyes narrowed slightly. Or high-level cooperation. These weren't random mercenaries, Commander. Someone with significant resources and connections wanted Lady Kvari eliminated. Any leads on who might be behind it? Marcus asked. The Admiral activated a holographic display showing a stern-faced humanoid with deep blue skin and elaborate facial ridges. Counselor Dravek of the Altarian Consortium. He's been in a bitter trade dispute with Lord Kvari for control of the Proxima shipping lanes. Marcus studied the image. Altarians usually prefer economic warfare to physical assassination. Usually, Thorson agreed, but the stakes have escalated. Last month, Lord Kvari secured exclusive mining rights to the Cygnus asteroid belt, rights that Dravek had been negotiating for years. And killing Kravari's daughter would accomplish what exactly? Destabilization, the Admiral replied grimly. Lord Kvari is known to be extremely protective of his only child. Intelligence suggests he would abandon his business interests to pursue vengeance if anything happened to her. Marcus thought of Alara, her fierce independence, her combat skills, her reluctance to be defined by her father's position. She's more than capable of protecting herself. Perhaps, Thorson conceded. Yeah, but that's not how her father sees her. To him, she's an asset to be protected at all costs. The word struck an uncomfortable chord with Marcus. Wasn't that exactly how he'd initially viewed her? As an asset, a diplomatic package to be safeguarded? We've increased security throughout the station, he said, pushing the thought aside. Lady Kvari has been moved to enhanced, secure quarters with a full guard detail. Good, Thorson nodded, but that's only a temporary solution. We've received word that Lord Kvari himself is en route to Proxima Station. He's demanding his daughter's immediate return to their homeworld. Marcus felt an unexpected tightness in his chest. When will he arrive? Within 48 hours. Until then, Lady Kvari remains your responsibility, Commander. Keep her safe, keep her contained, and most importantly, keep her away from any communications that might alert her father to the full extent of what happened here. Sir? Marcus frowned. Lord Kvari was informed of a minor security incident that has been resolved. Thorson explained. If he knew about the assassination attempt, he'd arrive with a battle fleet instead of a diplomatic cruiser. The last thing we need is a private military force operating in Federation space. Marcus wanted to argue but recognized the political reality. Understood, sir. I'll ensure Lady Kvari remains secure until her father's arrival. See that you do, Thorson said, his tone making it clear the conversation was over. Dismissed, Commander. When Marcus returned to Alara's secure quarters, he found her standing by the viewport, gazing out at the limited view of the station's interior. She'd changed into a simpler outfit, a form-fitting jumpsuit in deep burgundy that complemented her crimson skin, but still managed to look regal and striking. She turned as he entered, her golden eyes lighting up in a way that made his heart skip. Commander Hill, she greeted him, her formal tone belied by the warmth in her expression. How was your meeting with the formidable Admiral Thorson? Informative, Marcus replied, moving to join her at the viewport. We've identified who might be behind the attack. Let me guess, she said dryly. Counselor Dravek of the Altarian Consortium. Marcus blinked in surprise. How did you know? Alara laughed, the sound like musical chimes. Because he's been trying to destroy my father for years. This isn't his first attempt to get at him through me, just the most direct. You've been targeted before? Marcus asked, concern sharpening his voice. Kidnapping attempts, mostly. She shrugged as if discussing something as mundane as the station's recycled air. A few poisoning efforts, one particularly creative scheme involving a shape-shifting courtesan. Marcus stared at her. And you're just casually mentioning this now? Should I have led with it? She asked, arching an eyebrow. Hello, I'm Alara Kvari, target of multiple assassination attempts. Pleasure to meet you. Despite himself, Marcus smiled. Point taken, but this information could have helped us prepare better security measures. Perhaps, she conceded, but then I might not have had the pleasure of seeing you in action. Her eyes traveled over him appreciatively, which would have been a terrible shame. The heat in her gaze reminded him vividly of the previous night, the taste of her lips, the feel of her body pressed against his, the way they had reluctantly parted before things progressed further. both agreeing they needed rest after the day's events. "About last night," he began, suddenly uncertain how to proceed. Alara stepped closer, eliminating the professional distance between them. "Yes, Commander? Having regrets already?" "No," he said firmly. "No regrets, just complications." "Ah," she nodded, understanding immediately. "My father's coming, isn't he?" "How did you—" "It's the logical next step," she interrupted. "An attack on his precious daughter? He'll want to personally oversee my return to the safety of our homeworld, where he can lock me away in a fortress and surround me with an army of guards?" The bitterness in her voice was palpable. Marcus reached out, taking her hand in his. "You really don't want to go back." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "Number, I've spent years fighting for independence, for the right to represent our family's interests in my own way. Every time I make progress, something happens to convince him I need protection, control, supervision. And this attack plays right into that pattern," Marcus realized. "Exactly," she sighed. "Dravek knows my father well. This wasn't just an attempt on my life. It was a strategic move to disrupt our business operations by triggering my father's protective instincts." Marcus considered this, impressed by her political acumen. "Your father arrives within 48 hours. Admiral Thorson wants you kept safe and uninformed about the severity of the attack." "Of course he does," Alara rolled her golden eyes. "Federation diplomacy at its finest. Lie to the powerful alien to prevent interstellar incidents." "Not lie," Marcus corrected. "Just selectively disclose." "A distinction without a difference," she replied. But her tone was more amused than angry. "So, Commander Hill, you have 48 hours to keep me safe, contained, and blissfully ignorant of my near-death experience." The way she emphasized contained sent a shiver down his spine. "Those are my orders, yes. And how do you plan to keep me occupied during this confinement?" she asked, stepping even closer until he could feel the warmth radiating from her body. Marcus swallowed hard, acutely aware of the security cameras monitoring the main living area. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion somewhere more private." Alara's lips curved into a knowing smile. "Lead the way, Commander." The bedroom of the secure quarters was the only area not monitored by security cameras. A small concession to privacy that Marcus was suddenly very grateful for. As the door slid shut behind them, Alara turned to face him, her golden eyes luminous in the dimmed lighting. "Alone at last, she murmured. "No admirals, no assassins, no protocols." "Just us," Marcus agreed, feeling a strange mixture of nervousness and anticipation. Despite his years of military discipline, something about Alara made him feel like a rookie on his first mission. She seemed to sense his thoughts, her head tilting slightly as she studied him. "You're nervous," she observed. "The fearless Commander Hill, who faced down armed assassins without flinching, nervous about being alone with me." "Not nervous," he corrected. "Cautious. There are implications to what's happening between us." "Political implications? Professional implications?" she asked, moving to sit on the edge of the bed. "Or personal ones?" "All of the above," Marcus admitted, remaining standing. "I'm responsible for your safety. Getting involved, it complicates that duty." Alara laughed softly. "Marcus, you bit me when we first met. I think we moved beyond standard security protocols quite some time ago." The reminder of their unusual first encounter brought a reluctant smile to his face. "Not my most professional moment." "No," she agreed, "but definitely my favorite." "Do you know what that moment meant to me?" Marcus shook his head, curious. "It was the first time in years someone treated me like a person instead of a position," she explained, her voice softening. "Not Lady Kvari. Not the heir to the Kvari fortune. Not a diplomatic asset to be managed. Just someone who needed to be reminded of boundaries." She patted the space beside her on the bed, and after a moment's hesitation, Marcus joined her. The mattress dipped slightly under his weight, bringing them closer together. "In my culture," Alara continued, "physical dominance is significant. When you bit me, you were speaking a language I understood on an instinctual level. You were saying, I see you, I acknowledge your power, and I match it with my own." Marcus hadn't considered the cultural implications of his impulsive action. "I just wanted you to stop poking me," he admitted. She laughed again, the sound warming something deep inside him. And that honesty is equally refreshing. Humans are so wonderfully direct. Not all of us, he said. I've known plenty of humans who could give a politician lessons in evasion and double talk. Perhaps, she conceded, but you, Marcus Hill, are refreshingly straightforward. Her hand found his on the bed, her fingers intertwining with his. It's one of the many things I find attractive about you. The simple touch of her hand sent a current of awareness through him. There are many things, he asked, his voice rougher than he intended. Oh yes, she confirmed, her golden eyes holding his. Your physical form, naturally. Humans have such fascinating musculature. Her free hand moved to his arm, tracing the defined contours beneath his uniform sleeve. Your courage, your competence in crisis, your unexpected gentleness. Gentleness? He repeated, surprised by the assessment. She nodded. You could have hurt me when you bit me. You chose not to. Even in asserting dominance, you showed restraint. That's rare among those with power. Her words resonated with him, touching on his core beliefs about how authority should be wielded. Power without restraint isn't strength, he said quietly. It's just force. Exactly, Alara whispered, leaning closer. You understand the difference. So many don't. The space between them seemed charged with electricity, a tangible current drawing them together. When their lips met this time, it wasn't with the hesitant exploration of their first kiss, but with a hungry certainty that left no room for doubt or hesitation. Marcus's hands found her waist, pulling her closer as the kiss deepened. Her skin was warmer than a human's, radiating heat that seemed to burn through the fabric of her jumpsuit. Her fingers tangled in his hair, holding him to her as if afraid he might pull away. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Alara's golden eyes were dark with desire. I want you, Marcus Hill, she said simply, directly. Not because you're human, or because you're forbidden, or because it would scandalize my father's court. I want you because you're you. The raw honesty in her declaration stripped away his remaining reservations. I want you too, he admitted, even though it's complicated, even though it might be temporary, even though tomorrow your father arrives and everything changes. Then let's take tonight, she suggested, her hands moving to the fastening of his uniform. Let tomorrow worry about itself. Marcus caught her hands, stilling them. Are you sure? Your people and mine? There are differences, expectations. Alara smiled, a predatory expression that sent a thrill through him. In my culture, when a woman chooses a mate, she does so decisively and without reservation. Are you questioning my choice, Commander? The challenge in her voice awakened something primal in him, a response to her assertiveness that transcended cultural differences. Not questioning, he clarified, his voice dropping to a lower register. Just making sure we understand each other. I understand perfectly, she purred, freeing her hands from his grasp to resume unfastening his uniform. I choose you, Marcus Hill. Tonight, you're mine. And you're mine, he replied, surprising himself with the possessiveness in his tone. Her golden eyes flashed with approval. Yes, she agreed. Yours. The simple exchange of words carried the weight of a ritual, an agreement that went beyond the physical. As clothing was shed and boundaries dissolved, Marcus discovered that while their species might have evolved on different worlds, some languages were universal, the language of touch, of desire, of mutual surrender. Alara's crimson skin was like silk beneath his hands, her body responding to his touch with an enthusiasm that matched his own. They explored each other with equal parts curiosity and passion, discovering differences that enhanced rather than divided, similarities that created bridges between their worlds. When they finally came together, it was with a sense of rightness that transcended the physical act. In that moment, they weren't human and alien, commander and aristocrat, protector and protected. They were simply Marcus and Alara, two beings finding connection in a vast, often cold universe. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the dim light, Alara traced patterns on his chest with her fingertips. Your heart beats faster than mine, she observed, but in a similar rhythm. Convergent evolution, Marcus murmured, his hand stroking the length of her fiery hair. Different paths to similar solutions. Is that what we are? She asked, propping herself up to look at him. Convergent evolution. He considered the question, seeing beyond the scientific terminology to the deeper meaning. Maybe, or maybe we're proof that some things are universal, regardless of where or how we evolved. Like what? She prompted. Like the need for connection, he said thoughtfully, for understanding, for someone who sees us as we really are, not as what others expect us to be. Alara's expression softened. You do see me, don't you? Not the title or the lineage or the political value. I see you, he confirmed, brushing a strand of fiery hair from her face. Brave, brilliant, occasionally infuriating Alara. She laughed, the sound vibrating against his chest. Only occasionally? Well, you haven't poked me again, he pointed out with a smile. Though I'm beginning to think you did that deliberately to provoke a reaction. Her golden eyes danced with mischief. Perhaps, or perhaps I simply wanted to touch you and didn't know how else to do so without compromising my dignity. Your dignity seems intact to me, Marcus said, his hand tracing the elegant curve of her spine. Does it? She asked, arching into his touch like a contented feline. I'm not sure my father would agree, considering my current position. The mention of her father brought reality crashing back. He arrives tomorrow, Marcus remembered, his contentment dimming slightly. Yes, Alara sighed, and he'll expect me to return home with him, properly chastened by this minor security incident, and ready to resume my role as the obedient daughter. Is that what you want? Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. What I want, she said, her voice taking on a harder edge, is to complete the diplomatic mission I came here to accomplish, to negotiate the new mining rights that will strengthen both our family's position and the Federation's presence in this sector, to prove to my father that I'm capable of representing our interests without an army of protectors. Marcus considered this. The mining negotiations were legitimate, not just a cover story? Of course they were legitimate, she replied, looking slightly offended. Did you think I came all this way just for the pleasure of being nearly assassinated? I thought, Marcus hesitated. Admiral Thorson implied your presence here was more symbolic than substantive. Alara's expression darkened. Of course he did. Federation officials are as bad as my father, seeing me as a decorative accessory rather than a serious negotiator. She sat up fully, the sheet falling away from her crimson shoulders. I've spent years studying interstellar economics and resource management. I've personally overseen 3 major trade agreements that increased our profits by 30% while maintaining sustainable extraction practices. The passion in her voice as she spoke about her work was captivating. This wasn't the spoiled aristocrat he'd initially assumed her to be, but a competent, dedicated professional, frustrated by others' inability to see beyond her title and appearance. I believe you, Marcus said simply. The sincerity in his tone seemed to surprise her. You do? Yes, he nodded. And I think you should complete your mission. Alara's golden eyes widened. Even though your admiral wants me safely contained until my father arrives to collect me? Even though, Marcus confirmed, making a decision that could potentially end his career, but felt undeniably right. I'm supposed to protect you. In my judgment, helping you fulfill your purpose here is the best way to do that. A slow smile spread across her face, transforming it with genuine joy. Marcus Hill, you continue to surprise me? Good, he replied, pulling her back down beside him. I'd hate to become predictable. She settled against him, her head finding a comfortable spot on his shoulder. So, Commander, what's your plan for subverting your admiral's orders while technically fulfilling your duty? First, Marcus said, his hand resuming its gentle exploration of her back, we rest. Tomorrow is going to be complicated. And after we rest, she prompted. After we rest, he continued, we prepare for your father's arrival by giving you something concrete to show him, a completed mining rights agreement that benefits both the Kvari interests and the Federation. Ambitious, she commented. The negotiations were expected to take weeks. We don't have weeks, Marcus pointed out. We have hours. But I'm betting you came prepared with proposals, counter-proposals, and contingency plans for every possible scenario. Alara laughed softly. You really do see me, don't you? I'm starting to, he agreed, and I like what I see. She pressed a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. As do I, Commander. As do I. The following morning found them not in bed, but in the station's secure conference room, surrounded by holographic displays showing mineral surveys, extraction projections, and trade route analyses. Alara, now dressed in a formal diplomatic attire that managed to be both elegant and practical, was in her element, navigating complex negotiations with the Federation's resource management team with a skill that impressed even the most skeptical officials. Marcus stood nearby, officially present as her security detail, but increasingly drawn into the substance of the discussions. His years of service had given him a solid understanding of the station's operational needs, and he found himself offering insights that bridged the gap between Alara's commercial interests and the Federation's strategic concerns. The northern continent's deposits are richer, Alara was explaining, manipulating a three-dimensional geological survey, but extraction there would require significant infrastructure investment. The southern fields are more accessible and could be operational within 6 months. The southern approach puts extraction operations uncomfortably close to indigenous settlements, countered Director Preston, the Federation's chief resource officer. We've had difficulties with similar arrangements on other worlds. A valid concern, Alara acknowledged, but if you'll examine the proposal's third section, you'll see we've incorporated a buffer zone extending 50 kilometers from any settlement, with additional environmental safeguards that exceed Federation standards by 20%. Director Preston looked impressed despite himself. That's unusually considerate for a commercial operation. The Kvari approach to resource extraction is long-term, Alara explained. Sustainable practices and positive community relations increase profitability over time, even if they require larger initial investments. Marcus watched her work, admiring not just her intelligence and preparation, but her genuine commitment to ethical business practices. This wasn't the entitled aristocrat who had first stepped off the transport. This was a capable, principled leader who happened to have been born to privilege, but didn't use it as an excuse for exploitation. The negotiations continued through the morning, with agreements taking shape more rapidly than anyone had anticipated. By midday, they were reviewing final terms, with both sides making reasonable concessions to reach a mutually beneficial arrangement. I believe we have an agreement, Director Preston finally announced, looking both surprised and pleased. Lady Kvari, your reputation as a negotiator is well-deserved. Thank you, Director, Alara replied with a diplomatic smile. I look forward to a productive partnership between the Kvari interests and the Federation. As the meeting concluded and the Federation officials filed out, Alara turned to Marcus with a triumphant grin. Well, Commander, was that substantive enough for your Admiral? More than, Henry, he admitted, returning her smile. You were impressive. We were impressive, she corrected. Your input on the security protocols for the extraction sites was crucial. I wouldn't have considered the seasonal migration patterns of the northern predator species. Before Marcus could respond, his communicator buzzed. He'll hear, he answered. Commander, came Lieutenant Parker's voice. Lord Kravari's vessel has entered the system. Estimated arrival at Proxima Station in 2 hours. Acknowledged, Marcus replied. Prepare the diplomatic reception area according to protocol. I'll escort Lady Kvari there personally. As he ended the communication, he found Alara watching him with a complex expression. He's early, she said simply. Yes, Marcus agreed. 2 hours, she nodded, her golden eyes holding his. Then we should prepare. I need to change into something more appropriate for greeting my father. They walked in companionable silence back to her quarters, both aware that their brief time together was drawing to a close. Once inside, Alara moved to the bedroom to change, while Marcus reviewed the security arrangements for Lord Kravari's arrival. When she emerged, Marcus's breath caught. She was dressed in a formal gown of deep emerald that contrasted dramatically with her crimson skin, adorned with intricate metalwork that seemed to flow like liquid around her neck and shoulders. Her fiery hair was arranged in an elaborate style that spoke of status and tradition. You look, he began, struggling to find adequate words. Like Lady Alara Kvari, heir to the Kvari fortune and dutiful daughter, she finished for him, a hint of resignation in her voice. The role I was born to play, Marcus crossed to her, taking her hands in his. No, he said firmly. You look like Alara, powerful, brilliant, and entirely your own person. Her expression softened. "Thank you for that, and for everything else." "What happens now?" he asked, the question encompassing far more than the immediate future. "Now," she said, squeezing his hands, "I greet my father. I present him with a completed mining agreement that exceeds his expectations. I demonstrate that I'm capable of fulfilling my responsibilities without incident. And then," Marcus pressed. "And then," she continued, "I negotiate. Not for mining rights this time, but for my future." The determination in her voice gave him hope. "Your father values results," he observed. "You've certainly delivered those." "Yes," she agreed. "Though he may be less enthusiastic about some of my methods." Her golden eyes sparkled with mischief. "You mean getting involved with a human security officer?" Marcus asked with a wry smile. "Among other things," she replied. "My father has traditional views about suitable companions for his only daughter." Marcus felt a pang at the implication. "I understand. Your worlds are different." "They are," she acknowledged. "But worlds can be bridged, remember?" Before he could respond, his communicator buzzed again. "Commander," came Parker's voice, "Lord Kravari's vessel has increased speed. New arrival estimate is 45 minutes. "Acknowledged," Marcus replied. "We're on our way to the reception area." As they prepared to leave, Alara caught his arm. "Marcus, whatever happens when my father arrives, know this. What happened between us was real. Not a game, not a diversion, not a rebellion against my father's authority. Real." The sincerity in her voice touched something deep within him. "I know," he said quietly. "For me too." She smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face. "Good. Then let's go face the indomitable Lord Kvari together." The diplomatic reception area had been prepared according to the elaborate protocols required for a visitor of Lord Kravari's status. Honor guards stood at attention, Federation officials in formal dress waited nervously, and even Admiral Thorson had made an appearance, his expression suggesting he'd rather be facing a Klingon battle fleet than a diplomatic ceremony. "Commander Hill," the Admiral greeted him as Marcus escorted Alara into the reception area. "Lady Kvari." His eyes narrowed slightly as he took in their composed expressions. "I trust your confinement wasn't too onerous." "Not at all, Admiral," Alara replied smoothly. "Commander Hill was the perfect host. In fact, we used the time productively to finalize the mining rights agreement." Thorson blinked in surprise. "The agreement is completed." "Signed and sealed this morning," Alara confirmed. "Director Preston was most accommodating once we addressed the Federation's concerns about indigenous settlements and environmental impact." The Admiral looked to Marcus, who nodded confirmation. "It's a solid agreement, sir. Beneficial to both parties." Before Thorson could respond, the station's announcement system activated. "Attention all personnel. Diplomatic vessel Kravari's Pride has docked. Prepare for arrival of Lord Tiberius Kvari." A hush fell over the reception area as all eyes turned to the main entrance. After a moment, the doors slid open to reveal a delegation of elaborately dressed attendants who entered in precise formation, creating an honor corridor for the figure who followed. Lord Tiberius Kvari was imposing in a way that transcended physical stature. Though tall for his species, it was the aura of absolute authority that made him seem to fill the room. His crimson skin was darker than Alara's, weathered by age and experience, and his golden eyes missed nothing as they swept the assembled Federation officials before coming to rest on his daughter. "Alara," he said, his voice deep and resonant, "you appear unharmed." "I am well, Father," she replied, stepping forward with perfect poise. "The Federation has been most attentive to my safety and comfort." Lord Kravari's gaze shifted to Marcus, standing at attention nearby. "And this is the security officer responsible for your protection during this, incident?" "Commander Marcus Hill," Alara confirmed. His quick action and strategic thinking were instrumental in resolving the situation. The Kvari patriarch studied Marcus with an intensity that seemed to pierce through to his very core. "I understand there was an assassination attempt, Commander, not the minor security incident initially reported." Marcus glanced at Admiral Thorson, whose expression had gone carefully blank, then back to Lord Kvari. "Yes, sir. A coordinated attack by Morcadian operatives, likely hired by Councillor Drevek of the Altarian Consortium." I see, Lord Kvari nodded slowly. And you neutralized this threat? With Lady Alara's assistance, Marcus replied honestly. She's quite proficient in combat situations. A flicker of surprise crossed Lord Kravari's face before he masked it. Is she indeed? How unexpected. Not really, Father, Alara interjected. Those combat training sessions you insisted upon throughout my youth were quite thorough. They were meant for self-defense in emergencies, her father replied. Not active participation in firefights with professional assassins. Nevertheless, they proved useful, she said with a slight smile, as did Commander Hill's willingness to treat me as a capable ally rather than a helpless charge. Lord Kravari's eyes narrowed thoughtfully as he looked between his daughter and Marcus. Interesting. And during this alliance, you also managed to complete the mining negotiations. Negotiations that were expected to take weeks? We did, Alara confirmed, producing a data crystal containing the agreement. All terms have been finalized to our advantage while maintaining the ethical standards you've always insisted upon. Her father accepted the crystal, turning it in his fingers thoughtfully. You've exceeded expectations, daughter. Though your methods remain unconventional, effective, nonetheless, she replied with quiet confidence. Lord Kravari's attention returned to Marcus. Commander Hill, I would speak with you privately before we depart. Marcus straightened. Of course, sir. Father, Alara began, but Lord Kvari raised a hand. Diplomatic pleasantries first, Alara. I'm sure Admiral Thorson is eager to discuss the revised version of recent events with me. His golden eyes, so like his daughter's yet harder, colder, fixed on the Federation Admiral. Shall we, Admiral? As the official reception proceeded, Marcus found himself wondering what Lord Kvari could possibly want to discuss with him. Gratitude for protecting his daughter, suspicion about their relationship, a warning to stay away. All seemed equally possible. The formal proceedings dragged on for what felt like hours, but was likely less than one. Throughout, Alara played her role perfectly, the poised, accomplished diplomat representing her family's interests. Yet occasionally, when no one else was looking, her golden eyes would find his across the room, conveying messages no words could adequately express. Finally, as the reception wound down, Lord Kvari approached Marcus. Commander, shall we take that walk now? Marcus nodded, following the Kvari patriarch as he moved away from the main gathering toward a quiet corner of the reception area with a viewport overlooking the station's docking bays. My daughter speaks highly of you, Lord Kvari began without preamble. This is unusual. Alara rarely approves of anyone I assign to her protection. I wasn't assigned to her, sir, Marcus clarified. I'm the station's head of security. Lady Alara was under my protection as part of my regular duties. A distinction she would appreciate, Lord Kvari observed. Alara has always resisted special treatment, despite, or perhaps because of her position. Marcus remained silent, unsure where the conversation was heading. She completed the mining negotiations in record time, Kvari continued. The terms are surprisingly favorable, better than I anticipated, particularly regarding the environmental protections and indigenous rights. Lady Alara is a skilled negotiator, Marcus said simply. Yes, Kvari agreed, though in the past her focus on ethical considerations has occasionally limited our profit margins. He turned to face Marcus directly. She mentioned your input was valuable. A security officer with insights into resource management. I've served on Proxima Station for 3 years, Marcus explained. You learned the local conditions, the challenges, the opportunities. I merely provided context. Lord Kvari studied him with those penetrating golden eyes. Context, he repeated. Yes, context is important, isn't it? For instance, the context of my daughter's sudden efficiency might include her desire to prove herself capable before my arrival. Or perhaps, he paused significantly, other motivations. Marcus maintained his professional demeanor despite the implication. Lady Alara is dedicated to her responsibilities, sir. Her accomplishments here speak for themselves. Indeed they do, Kvari nodded. Just as your actions during the assassination attempt speak to your character, you could have followed protocol, secured my daughter in a safe room with a team of guards. Instead, you personally accompanied her through maintenance tunnels, engaged in direct combat alongside her, and treated her as a partner rather than a package to be delivered. It was the tactically sound decision, Marcus replied. Lady Alara proved herself capable in combat. Utilizing her skills improved our chances of survival. Tactically sound, Kvari repeated, a hint of amusement in his voice. A very human assessment, practical, direct. He turned to gaze out the viewport. Do you know why I insisted Alara learn combat skills, Commander? The question seemed rhetorical, but Marcus answered anyway. To protect herself when necessary. Partially, Kvari acknowledged, but also to understand power, how to wield it, how to respect it, how to recognize it in others. He glanced at Marcus. In our culture, true respect is earned through demonstration of capability, not granted through titles or positions. Marcus thought of Alara's reaction when he'd bitten her. Her shock, yes, but also her subsequent interest, her comment about physical dominance being significant in her culture. I believe I understand, sir. Do you? Kvari asked, his tone suggesting genuine curiosity. Then perhaps you can understand why I'm not immediately ordering my daughter's return home, despite the obvious dangers here. That was unexpected. Sir? Alara has demonstrated capability beyond my expectations, Kvari explained. The mining agreement alone would justify extending her diplomatic mission. But more importantly, she has found something here that has eluded her in our home system, a challenge worthy of her abilities. Marcus remained silent, processing the implications. She intends to request an extended stay, Kvari continued, to oversee the implementation of the mining agreement and to pursue additional diplomatic opportunities. What are your thoughts on this, Commander? The question felt like a test. I think Lady Alara should be allowed to fulfill her potential. Marcus answered honestly. She's proven herself more than capable, both in negotiations and in crisis. And the security concerns? Kvari pressed. Councillor Dravik is unlikely to abandon his efforts. Security protocols can be enhanced, Marcus replied, and Lady Alara has demonstrated she's not an easy target. Lord Kvari smiled slightly. No, she is not, much like her mother in that regard. His expression grew more serious. There is another matter to consider, Commander. My daughter's personal interests. Here it was, the conversation Marcus had been dreading. Sir? I'm not blind, Commander Hill, Kvari said bluntly. Nor am I ignorant of the way my daughter looks at you, or you at her. Such attachments are not unprecedented between our species, though they are uncommon, particularly among families of our standing. Marcus straightened, preparing for the worst. I respect Lady Alara greatly, sir. Respect, Kvari nodded. A good foundation, but insufficient for what you're both considering, I think. Before Marcus could respond, Lord Kvari continued. In our culture, Commander, when a potential mate demonstrates both strength and restraint, the ability to assert dominance without causing harm, it is considered a highly desirable trait. Alara mentioned an incident when you first met. Something about establishing boundaries in a rather direct manner? Marcus felt heat rise to his face, remembering the bite. It was unprofessional of me, sir. Perhaps by Federation standards, Kvari conceded. By our standards, it was appropriate. Even promising. That was definitely not the reaction Marcus had expected. Sir, Lord Kvari turned fully to face him. I did not become the most successful businessman in 3 systems by clinging to outdated traditions, Commander. I recognize value where I find it. You have proven your worth in protecting my daughter, in supporting her diplomatic efforts, and in earning her regard. He paused, his golden eyes assessing. Should Alara choose to extend her stay on Proxima Station, she will require continued security, someone who sees her as both an asset to be protected and a capable individual in her own right, someone who has already demonstrated both strength and restraint in their dealings with her. The implication was clear, but Marcus needed to be certain. Are you suggesting I continue as Lady Alara's security detail? I am suggesting, Lord Kvari said deliberately, that whatever develops between you and my daughter is your business, provided it does not interfere with her duties or her safety. In fact, given what I've observed, it may enhance both. Marcus was momentarily speechless. "You seem surprised, Commander," Kvari observed, a hint of amusement in his voice. "I expected a different reaction, sir," Marcus admitted. "No doubt," Kvari nodded. "The protective father threatening the unsuitable suitor is a common narrative in many cultures. But I am above all else a pragmatist. My daughter is happier and more productive than I've seen her in years. The mining agreement she negotiated is exemplary, and you, Commander Hill, have proven yourself worthy of consideration by our standards." He extended his hand in the human gesture of agreement. "So, Commander, do we understand each other?" Marcus took the offered hand, still processing this unexpected turn. "I believe we do, sir." "Excellent," Lord Kvari said, releasing his hand. "Now let us rejoin the others before Alara becomes suspicious. She has always disliked it when I evaluate her companions without her presence." As they walked back toward the main reception, Marcus found himself re-evaluating everything he thought he knew about Lord Tiberius Kvari. The man was intimidating, certainly, but also surprisingly progressive and perceptive. Alara was engaged in conversation with Admiral Thorson when they returned, but her golden eyes immediately sought Marcus, a question in their depths. He gave her a subtle nod, hoping to convey that all was well. "Admiral Thorson," Lord Kvari announced as they approached, "I've decided that my daughter will remain on Proxima Station to oversee the implementation of the mining agreement. Her diplomatic mission is extended indefinitely." The Admiral looked startled. "Lord Kvari, given the recent security concerns, will be addressed appropriately," Kvari interrupted smoothly. "I understand Commander Hill has performed admirably in protecting my daughter. I see no reason to change these arrangements." Alara's expression remained diplomatically neutral, but her eyes shone with barely contained joy. "If the Federation agrees, of course," she added, deferring to protocol. Admiral Thorson looked between them, clearly calculating political implications. "The Federation would be honored by Lady Kravari's continued presence," he finally said. "Commander Hill will ensure her safety remains a priority." "I'm certain he will," Lord Kvari agreed with a knowing glance at Marcus. "Now, if you'll excuse us, I would like some time with my daughter before my departure. There are family matters to discuss." As Alara left with her father, she cast one last look at Marcus over her shoulder, a look full of promise and possibility. He returned it, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. 2 days later, Lord Kravari's vessel departed Proxima Station, leaving Alara behind to continue her diplomatic mission. The official announcement cited the successful mining agreement and ongoing trade negotiations as justification for her extended stay, making no mention of assassination attempts or security concerns. Marcus found her in her new quarters, still secure, but considerably larger and more comfortable than the emergency accommodations they'd shared during the crisis. She was standing by the viewport, watching her father's ship disappear into the distance, when he entered. "He's gone?" Marcus asked, moving to stand beside her. "Yes," she confirmed. "Back to our homeworld to implement the first phase of the mining agreement." "And you're staying," he said, not quite a question. Alara turned to face him, her golden eyes luminous with emotion. "I'm staying." "Your father approved," Marcus told her. "Of everything." Her eyebrows rose in surprise. "Everything?" "Well," Marcus amended with a smile. "He said whatever develops between us is our business, provided it doesn't interfere with your duties or safety." Alara laughed, the sound like music. "How unexpectedly progressive of him. He also mentioned something about biting being considered appropriate in your culture," Marcus added, a hint of mischief in his voice. "Something about demonstrating strength and restraint simultaneously." "Did he now?" she asked, moving closer. "And what did you think of that cultural insight?" Marcus reached for her, pulling her against him. "I think I'm beginning to appreciate the nuances of interspecies diplomacy." "Are you?" she murmured, her arms sliding around his neck. "Perhaps you need more practice." "Practice makes perfect," he agreed, lowering his lips to hers. As they kissed, Marcus reflected on how dramatically his life had changed in just a few days. What had begun with an arrogant alien aristocrat poking him in the chest had evolved into something profound and unexpected, a connection that transcended species, cultures, and expectations. Alara pulled back slightly, her golden eyes searching his. "What are you thinking about so seriously?" "About how sometimes the most unexpected beginnings lead to the most remarkable journeys," he replied honestly. Very philosophical, Commander, she teased, though I prefer to think of it more simply. Oh, he asked. And how's that? Alara smiled, her expression both mischievous and tender. Sometimes you have to bite to find what you're looking for. Marcus laughed, pulling her close again. In that case, I'm very glad you kept poking. And I'm very glad you bit back, she whispered against his lips. In the vast expanse of space, on a station orbiting a desert world, a human and an alien had found something rare and precious. Understanding, acceptance, and the promise of a future neither had anticipated, but both now embraced wholeheartedly. And it had all begun with a bite.